This video will show you how to create a gradebook. Welcome to our gradebook demo, and I want to first of all highlight that the main reason for this project is to demonstrate an Excel use of artificial intelligence, and it has to do with, for example, if I have a teaching assistant and I want to set things up so that that teaching assistant can enter the grades and then calculate a letter grade for me. I don't want them making that decision or trying to do that on their own. So I would set up the gradebook so that grades are calculated automatically. Hence the concept of artificial intelligence from the perspective that my teaching assistant will not be deciding what grades students get. The gradebook will tell my TA what grade a student gets. So the first thing I want to do is notice that I have a situation where I go from column A to column E. What that means is that I've hidden columns in between here. Let me hide one more column so you can see what I mean. There we go. Now I hid column E by right-clicking and choosing hide. Now it's A through F. I can unhide columns by dragging from the column beside it on either side of it from A to F. Both are highlighted. I right-click and I unhide. Now probably it was hidden because I wanted to be able to see everything over here. There's another couple of ways of fixing that. One, of course, is using this zoom at the bottom. I can zoom out to see everything, or I can zoom in, and it depends on what I'm trying to accomplish at the time as to which I want to do. But there's an even better way. I'm going to hide the surname because I don't need that. But then I'd like to keep the first name and the ID number up for reference purposes. I could see the email going away, but I'd like to be able to see at all times the headings and these particular columns. So I go into freeze panes, and right now I've already got frozen panes, so I'm going to unfreeze panes, and then I'm going to go back here and I am going to choose freeze. And what that does is now I can scroll down and it keeps the top row with the headings available, and if I scroll to the side it keeps the ID numbers up as I scroll over. And again, I can modify this a little bit. Maybe I'm trying to see it too much at once. That's about right there now. Before we go any further, I want to point out that the midterm exam is coming across from the midterm tab without a nice, pretty decimal place. It's got way too many decimal places. That's because in the midterm column, it's actually formatted to get rid of the zeros, but anything be deeper. But the fact is, all of those values are there, and we'd like to be able to round that off when we get to our final grades. So what I'm going to do, you can do it just formatting, but then if you're really trying to get this to where it's not got a whole bunch of decimal places, what you can do is take the whole expression and round it up. Now, I know we haven't dealt with VLOOKUP yet, but what I want to make the point is that I can do something like this whole complicated thing, and then I can round it off. So that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to do round, and this is the value. This whole thing creates a value, which we've seen. And then I do comma, and then I have number of digits. Now what number of digits is referring to is how far do I want it rounded. Well, let's do to one decimal place. Having one decimal place will give me this. So that is the value rounded to one decimal place. And notice if I add decimal places, it still stays at 22.6. So now what I want to do is actually take this rounding and take it to all the other cells. Before I do that, I want you to have a better view of it, so let's go to a view where we're at 75%, so we can see the whole area. And the best way to do this now is actually going to be under Home. Go ahead and copy it, but then as we highlight this down, I don't want to ruin the formatting there, the fill, and have to redo that. So under Paste, I am going to choose just to paste the formulas. So as I do that, now you get a nice decimal place, and then of course we want it to go to make sure that every one of them is looking the same. So even if it's a 0 decimal place, it shows up with that 1 decimal place. Now we need to take a look at the bottom of the screen. Something we've not looked at until now is what's going on with these totals. Active total means how much has actually been used of this assessment. In other words, this in-class project has already been completed, and therefore the grades have been entered. And since the grades have been entered in full, the active total is 5, which equals the course value of 5. Here's another one. Participation grade at this point is 10, which means all the participation points have been in. But what if I actually was only part way through? What if this was participation on the first half of the class and it was out of 5? Can I handle that and still be able to calculate a grade, which we'll do later? And the answer is yes. And what I would do is I would put, for the active total, I would enter 5. Now notice when I do enter the 5 that the pending changes to 5. What I want to show you now is how we accomplish that. So why don't we take and zoom in a little bit more just on this area here and see what happens when we do that. So here we are, pending total. Actually, I'm going to hide this column. If I scroll over, I guess it'll hide it. So what's going on here? I'm going to just double click on the first pending total and show you. So this is the if function. And if I go down, if I click into the if function, you'll see down here it gives you coaching as to what the different parts of the function are. So in this case, the first part is what's called the logical test. What is the logical test? It's seeing whether something is the same as something else, if it's greater than, less than, those kinds of comparisons of values. In this case, it's comparing the active total, which is in E29, with the course value, which is in E31, and it's saying, are they the same? Are they equal? That's the logical test. If they are the same, then that's true. So if that's true, then you notice here it says in the second part after the comma, so we got logical test and then value if true. So I'm going to click on value if true. Notice that it highlights the 0. So if it's true that the active and the course value are the same, then of course what's pending? Nothing. So since the pending value here is 0, that's what we enter. We say if this is true, then what's pending is nothing. If on the other hand this is not true, then we assume of course that it's going one direction, and that is that there's more course value yet to be applied. And so then you take your E31, which would be your course value, minus what's active now, and that of course equals your pending. And that's why, if I press escape, when we get over here to the participation grade, if I look at this, is this the same as this? No. So I can't put a 0 here. What I'm going to put is what the result is if I subtract 10 minus 5. So 10 minus 5 is 5, and that's how this looks in terms of the formula. There it is. Is G29 the same as G31? No, it's not. So we can't put in a 0. We've got to calculate what's left to be applied. So press escape again, and now what we'll do, let's go back in here, because obviously we have up to the whole 10 points active. So I'm going to enter 10, and now you see the pending does go to 0. Same thing with the midterm, but if we scroll over just a little bit, we will see that for the final exam, it's still pending for all of the points because, of course, nothing is active yet. So let's go now and actually calculate the final exam. To do all that we need to do at the final exam, obviously we need to go to the top, but let's also zoom to 100% so that our view is a little bit better. So here I am, and I want to do the final exam. We have not yet done the lookup, but we have for others. You see this one is actually just a value that's entered directly in the grade summary. This one does a lookup in the participation tab. Now this one then we see that it does a lookup in the midterm tab. So for this one now, obviously for the final exam, we want to go and look in the final exam tab. Let's go take a quick look. Here we have the ID number, the raw score, and then the percentage score. So we can either bring the raw score or the percentage score, but the percentage makes the most sense. So let's go back, and here we begin our formula, VLOOKUP, and if I double click on it in the list, it will fill it in properly and start the appendices. And then here's the coaching. So lookup value. What is the lookup value? Well, the unique thing that we can see is the ID number. So I'm going to click on that. Notice that it fills it in. Okay, C2 is filled in. Press a comma, and I can move to the next part, and that's the table array. What it means is, where is the information? Well, the information is in the final exam tab, and I can, because I'm in the middle of the formula, just like if I was to click on another cell here, it would fill it in. But I can now go to the final exam tab. Notice that it adds that beginning followed by an exclamation mark. And now within the exam tab, not including the titles, I don't include the titles, I highlight the part of this sheet that provides me with the information. Here are the ID numbers, and here are the percentages. Notice column 1, 2, 3. That's valuable to us because it always looks up what's in the first column, but then you can bring back in the lookup what's in any of the columns. So if I did column 1, it would bring that back again. If I bring column 2, it's bringing this back. If I say column 3, it's this. But let's take a look at our formula here. We have C2 through E28. We have not talked yet about locking, but we will to a large extent sooner. For now, I'm just going to tell you that I'm pressing the F4 key. That's F as in Fred and the number 4. So F4, and you notice that it puts dollar signs. Very simply, what that tells Excel when I do that is do not change anything. So just think of this dollar sign saying the words do not change. So do not change the C, do not change the 2, do not change the E, do not change the 28. And so when I go to copy the formula, all the do not changes do not change. So I'm going to press, notice that's the end of the table array. It ends with a comma, so I press the comma, and now it asks for the column index. Well, I just finished saying it's 1, 2, 3. This is the value we're bringing back. We want everyone's percentage brought back. So that is now number 3, column 3. Now there's one more feature, and that is the range lookup mode. We'll see another way of doing things later, but for now we want an exact match. I don't want an approximate grade for someone based on where they are in the list. This is an exact match, and again I'm going to double click on that to get it to write it in for me. That is the VLOOKUP, and if I press enter, I am brought back here, and I see now my final exam. It says 0.7, which if I go check out, that's for Rachel Ardner, and I add more decimal places. There you go. Now you see that in fact it's more detailed than even the 72%. What I want to do though is I don't want this as a percentage. I want this as the number of points. Well, it's out of what? If we were to go down to the bottom, and now let's zoom out a little bit. Let's go to that 75% that lets us see all the way to the bottom. And we'll see that the active total isn't there. Let's quickly put that in. It's actually out of 30 points. And I'm going to enter that now because I'm entering the grades. And so pending goes to 0, but active total is 30. And it's located. This total of what it's actually worth is in cell I-29. So I am going to go back up here. I want to take my percentage and I'm going to multiply it times this active total. So Rachel would get 72% of the points by multiplying that. And again, this is the one location where I have this amount. I don't have it anywhere else, so I'm going to do my $ thing. And in this case, just so you can see me do it, I'm going to actually type in the $signs. So don't change the I. When you copy this formula, don't change the I, don't change the 29. I press enter, and I now have the points. Now again, what's wrong with this? Well, it's still going to more decimal places. So let's again add the round at the beginning, comma, 1, and now we have the final exam total as it is. And we're going to do what we did with the midterm exam, where we're going to copy it, and then we're going to highlight down, and we're going to do the special paste of the function, and it does it all the way down. Notice here that you will still see the I-29. It did not change that. It did not change this. It does change this part, which makes sense because when I'm down here, I want to be looking up Alex's ID number. I don't want it still looking at Rachel. So that's round, VLOOKUP, and absolute cell referencing is what it's called when we put in the $ signs.